Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepless 2. Tonight, I've brought you a calm, gentle story, a bedtime sleep story crafted for sleepless minds and restless hearts. This is more than just history for sleep. It's a soft-spoken escape into forgotten times and quieter worlds, designed to help you fall asleep fast. If your thoughts are racing, or if peace feels far away, you're in the right place. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let these sleep-inducing stories guide you gently into rest. Your quiet night begins now. With Sleepless to Asterisk Story 1. The cheese that could cost you your freedom. Dairy laws in medieval England. The smell of dawn and the silent churn you wake before the first roosters crow. The air in your small timber-framed cottage is thick with the scent of damp straw and the distant, sweet sharpness of curdled milk. Outside, the low fog clings to hedgerows, and you can almost hear the hush of dew settling on each blade of grass. Your hands are cracked from days spent at the churn. You live in 14th century Somerset, where cheese is not just food, but a livelihood, an offering, and sometimes, unexpectedly, a crime. In the medieval English countryside, cheese-making is as daily as breathing. Yet behind this rustic simplicity lies an intricate web of laws so peculiar that even a single wheel of cheese might invite suspicion as you press the curds into a heavy wooden mold. Your mind drifts to the local alehouse gossip. A neighbor was fined for selling unfit cheese, a term as slippery as the way you pour out into the yard. Unfit could mean too salty, too crumbly, too light, or simply too cheap. Laws from the assize of bread and ale echo through the village like a quiet chant. Everything weighed, measured, and taxed. In your mind's eye you see the village reeve, his broad-brimmed hat beaded with morning rain, stepping into the dairy unannounced. He checks the scales, sniffs the air, taps at a cheese with a knife as if listening for secrets. Outside, hens scratch under the old oak. A donkey brays at the distant ring of a church bell. You think of your mother who taught you to fold herbs into fresh cheese, marjoram, mint, and wild garlic, and of your grandmother who once claimed a ghost visited her if she failed to hang the cheesecloth correctly. You stir, breathe, and notice each sound, the gentle lap of milk against the churn, the drip of rain from the eaves, the slow pulse of your heart echoing in your ears. In these small acts, turning curd, checking the linen, pacing to the smokehouse, you realize that cheese is far more than sustenance. It is currency, community, and sometimes condemnation. How strange that a food so mild could bind you to the crown, to local lords, to neighbors ready to inform if you sell it by the wrong weight, or hide it in your cloak. Even the smallest round of cheese carries whispers of law, suspicion, and ancient customs. And as you wrap the cheese in cloth and watch a thin line of light grow on the horizon, you wonder, quietly, who decided these rules, who weighed the curd against the soul of a villager. Tonight, as the hearth embers die down, you think of all the hands across centuries, turning cheese by moonlight, hands that dared to believe that a quiet life might remain untouched by law. The court of cheese and the murmurs of the marketew awaken before sunrise once again. Your body attuned to the hush of the world before the first footsteps stir in the lane. A fine mist snakes along the hedgerows, slipping over the wooden fence, soaking your cloak as you step outside to fetch water. The coldness feels alive on your skin. A reminder that the laws of the land extend far beyond your own hearth. Today is market day, and in medieval England, this means much more than simple bartering. in the faint grey light. You tie your rough-spun wool cloak tighter and imagine the rows of stalls slowly coming alive, onions strung like beads, honey jars catching glimmers of early sun, baskets of eggs still warm from the hen house. But it is the cheese, your cheese, that will decide whether today brings warmth or whispers. In medieval towns and villages, cheese was not simply food to fill a table. It was a delicate promise, a mark of trust, a weight upon scales that measured not just ounces, but the soul of a community. This promise was watched over by men who called themselves Gultisters or tasters of the king, often appointed by the reeve or lord of the manor. They would walk the market aisles, cloaks heavy with rain or summer dust, carrying sticks tipped with iron or bone. You remember the first time you saw one of them, his face hidden beneath a broad felt hat, the tip of his staff knocking against the ground as he moved from table to table. He leaned forward, sliced off a sliver of cheese, and raised it to his lips as though performing a quiet ritual. His tongue flicked out, his eyes narrowed, and he either nodded with imperceptible approval or muttered words that turned pale. These men could fine, confiscate, or even close down a stall with a single scowl. It was said that some Gultisters carried small wooden tablets, recording secret marks against those they suspected of watering the milk, skimming the cream too thinly, or adulterating the curd with chalk and ground bones. Beneath the cloth canopy of your stall, you lay out the rounds you have worked on for days, pale yellow, pocked with tiny holes where the herbs have pressed their secrets into the paste. Your fingers tremble as you arrange them, smoothing the linen beneath, arranging marjoram sprigs as an offering. Nearby, a neighbor arranges wheels so large they resemble small shields, each bearing a wax seal from the local lord. You watch him, with a mix of admiration and quiet fear. The seal means he has paid extra dues, perhaps given favors to the reeve, or offered his best batch to the manor kitchen across the aisle. A woman you've known since childhood sells soft curds wrapped in vine leaves. Her husband was once fined 3 shillings more than a season's earnings for selling light cheese that weighed less than promised. After that, they kept a second set of hidden weights behind their stall, a practice as dangerous as it was desperate. The church bell tolls, a flat, echoing sound, calling the market to open. The Gultaster appears again, his stick tapping a soft rhythm that hushes the hum of voices. You watch his movements as one might watch a hawk circling. Over the henyard, he pauses at your neighbor's stall, tilts his head, and samples a wedge. A murmur passes down the aisle like a breeze stirring dry leaves. Then he turns to you. Your breath tightens. You lift a knife and offer a thin slice, the edges soft and pliant. He takes it between thumb and forefinger, lifts it to the morning light, studying it as though it might reveal hidden truths. You can't help but think of how many hours you spent warming the milk, how many times you checked the whey, how carefully you pressed it to avoid any air pockets. He tastes it slowly, letting it rest on his tongue. His eyes do not meet yours, and for a moment you hear only the distant bleat of a goat and the clop of a cart on the cobblestones beyond the square dot. At last, he nods, just once. Relief passes over you like warm honey drizzling across bread. Yet, your reprieve is fragile. Laws could change at the whim of the local lord, influenced by rumors or disputes among neighbors. In some villages, even selling cheese on certain holy days could be considered an offense, punishable by public penance, fines, or confiscation of goods. A memory flickers. A man you once knew, forced to stand at the church door with a rough sackcloth, tunic and a wheel of cheese hanging from his neck. As villagers filed past him after Mass, whispering judgments further down the row, a young boy runs between the stalls, a small bell swinging from his waist. He calls out announcements from the reeve, a reminder that cheese weights will be inspected again before the midsummer feast, and that anyone caught with fraudulent scales will be summoned to the manor court. The hallmote was more than just a court. It was a performance, a subtle dance of power and fear, held in the Lord's Hall or sometimes a makeshift wooden structure near the churchyard. The hallmote was where disputes over weights, measures, and market conduct played out. You imagine entering the hall, your feet heavy with mud, your eyes lowered as the reeve reads out the charges in a tone somewhere between sermon and scolding. The assembled villagers listen, their faces unreadable. Sometimes a neighbor testifies against you. Sometimes your own kin stands silent in the corner, averting their eyes. The Lord or his steward sits at the high table, a scroll unfurled before him, his seal ring glinting in the candlelight. Punishments, varied fines, paid in coin or in cheese itself, public penance, or in rare cases, temporary imprisonment in the local stocks. The stocks were cold and humiliating, set near the market so passers-by could jeer and toss bits of rotting vegetables. You think of the icy wind on your ankles, the ache in your back from stooping for hours, and the weight of being seen as a breaker of the community's fragile trust. For some, the fear of hallmote judgment was worse than the punishment itself. After a trial, even an innocent verdict left a residue of suspicion. Whispers followed you to the well, to the fields, to church pews. In a world where survival depended on neighborly ties, suspicion was as deadly as disease. Yet through it all, cheese remained central, a humble thread stitching together feasts and famines, births and funerals. On Michaelmas, villagers brought cheese rounds as offerings to the local church, decorated with wildflowers or small charms to ward off misfortune. On wedding mornings, young brides carried small wheels of soft cheese wrapped in linen, symbolizing fertility and prosperity. Underneath each ritual, the laws lurked, unseen yet omnipresent. They dictated not only how you sold cheese, but how you salted it, how long you aged it, and even where you stored it during certain feast days. Violations could mean a sudden visit from the reeve, or a knock at the door after twilight, when the hearth glowed low and every creak of the floorboards felt like an accusation. As the market day wears on, you watch coins change hands, you hear laughter and soft curses, you see children darting between the stalls with sticky fingers and bright eyes. Above it all, a quiet understanding threads through the crowd. Trust is as delicate as cream, easily spoiled, carefully maintained. At dusk, you pack away the unsold cheese, wrapping each piece as if tucking in a child for sleep. You count your coins, your mind flickering over each transaction, each approving nod, each moment of hesitation in a customer's eyes. The Goltester's nod lingers in your mind, at once a blessing and a warning. On the walk home, the lane is lit only by the fading glow of torches, casting long, trembling shadows across the hedge. A thin fog curls low to the ground, and you feel the dampness rise through your boots. You arrive at your cottage, lift the latch, and step inside. The smell of straw and warm milk greets you like an old friend. You set your basket on the table, and watch a moth flutter near the fire's last embers. Your thoughts drift to tomorrow. More curdling, more turning, more laws to consider. You remember your grandmother's whispered words about the cheese spirits, the unseen beings she claimed, guarded honest farmers, and punished the greedy. Perhaps those spirits live in the Goltaster's staff, in the reeve's ledger, in the soft fold of linen around each wheel. You climb into bed, pull the woolen blanket over your shoulders, and listen to the soft rhythm of your breath. In that half-waking moment, you wonder, did the law arise to protect the cheese, or did cheese arise to feed the law? A question, soft as a feather on your cheek, drifts with you into sleep. Midnight wheels, and the quiet rebellion of the Dariot is just before midnight. You wake to the sound of the wind slipping through the thatch above your head. The embers in the hearth glow like distant stars, their warmth fading slowly into the chill of the room. You listen to the hush between gusts, a hush so complete it feels like the world itself is holding its breath. Outside, the moon slips behind a drifting cloud, and for a moment, your cottage is swallowed in darkness. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, your feet landing on the rough floorboards with a soft creak. A nearby mouse pauses its nocturnal journey, the sound of tiny claws disappearing into a corner. You reach for your cloak and step outside, drawn not by choice, but by necessity. The demands of the dairy do not sleep. The world is pale and silvered, the hedgerows ghostly outlines, the trees frozen in moonlight as if holding secrets in their boughs. Tonight you have a clandestine task. Beneath the official market regulations, beyond the watchful eye of the Reeve and his Goltesters, there exists another cheese, one not meant for market stalls or church offerings. It is the midnight wheel in medieval England. While official laws controlled every cheese that saw daylight, many villagers kept aside small, secret batches for bartering, gifting, or even healing purposes. These were cheeses spiced with sage for fevers, cheeses salted heavily to last a long winter, cheeses wrapped in the leaves of wild burdock to bring luck to a new bride. You slip into the dairy hut, a small timber structure leaning slightly to one side, its roof patched with moss and old linen scraps. The smell inside is comforting. Warm milk, damp straw, faint herbs. You reach for the wooden tub where the curds have been quietly settling all day. Tonight's batch is special, curds, mixed with fennel and the last of the season's thyme, meant as a gift for a neighbour whose daughter lies sick with a chest complaint. The herbs are said to draw out bad humours, though whether it's true or not, the ritual itself brings comfort. Your hands move slowly, almost reverently, as you fold the curds in cloth, pressing them into a small wheel. Each turn of the cloth is an act of defiance and devotion. Defiance against the watchful laws, devotion to the soft bonds of kin and neighbour. Above your head, a spider drifts along a silken line, pausing as though watching your midnight labour. You imagine it as an ancient witness, older than any written law, more patient than any reeve's staff. You think of all the ways cheese connects your small world. The priest's table adorned with fat rounds during Eastertide, the alehouse benches where farmers share crumbly morsels with travellers, the hidden corners where elderly women whisper recipes, guarding them as one might guard a candle in the wind. There are stories of certain monasteries keeping secret cheese recipes locked in small chests, recipes passed down through generations, like sacred relics. Some monks even believed certain cheeses had healing powers, able to cure melancholy or soften the grief of a newly widowed heart. A legend tells of a hermit who lived in the forest edge, feeding only on water and a special cheese made from goat's milk and violet blossoms. He claimed it allowed him to hear the voices of angels in the twilight, though many dismissed him as mad. Still, pilgrims left offerings of cheese on the mossy stone near his hut, just in case, in the flickering light of your lantern, you'll recall these tales and feel a gentle warmth in your chest, a connection to an invisible tapestry of souls who once pressed, curd and whispered to the moon. When the wheel is shaped and wrapped, you carry it carefully to a small shelf at the back of the hut. There other midnight wheels rest like secret prayers. Some are meant for barter, a new comb from the traveling peddler, a sack of onions from a neighbor, a pair of woolen socks from the woman who knits by the roadside. Others are meant for silent gifts, a mother mourning a lost child, an old man who lost his teeth and can only manage soft curds. In these small offerings, you find a freedom unknown in the official markets, a freedom that no reeve can measure or confiscate. As dawn approaches, a thin violet line cuts across the horizon. You hear the first crow of a rooster from a distant yard. A dog barks, then settles. You return to the cottage, feeling the ache in your shoulders, the sting of cold air on your cheeks. Inside, the hearth has burned low. You kneel and coax the coals back to life, adding a handful of twigs and dried moss. The soft glow returns, painting the room in a gentle amber hush. You hang your cloak by the fire, sit on a low stool and close your eyes, letting the warmth creep slowly into your bones. In this hour, your mind drifts again to the laws, the endless ordinances written in cramped Latin script, the fines and seals, the wax stamps and heavy ledgers. You think of the reeve stick tapping softly in the morning mist, the gall taster's tongue probing for the faintest flaw. Yet here, in this small room lit by a patient fire, you remember that beyond all decrees and fines, cheese carries a softness stronger than any law, the quiet pact between giver and receiver, the unspoken trust kneaded into each curd. Later that morning, as the village stirs, you slip out with your small wheel wrapped in linen. The lane is damp with dew, and sparrows flit between the hedgerows. You pause at a neighbor's gate, listening for voices. A thin wisp of smoke curls from her chimney, and you see the shape of her through the window, bent over her daughter's bed. You leave the wheel by the door, placing a small sprig of thyme atop it. A quiet gesture, neither recorded in any ledger, nor punishable in any mote. You turn and walk back down the lane, feeling a peculiar lightness, as though your steps are carried by an unseen breeze. At the market that day, you hear rumors of new regulations. The Lord is said to be displeased with the quality of cheeses presented during the last harvest feast. Some claim he plans to introduce stricter weight inspections. Others whisper of new taxes on all dairy goods. The news drifts like smoke between stalls, impossible to grasp, yet heavy on every heart. Old Marjorie, a widow who sells eggs and small curds, clutches your arm and confides that she fears losing her only income. Her hands shake as she counts her coins, her eyes darting nervously toward the reeve's tent. You offer her a small slice from your own wheel, the one stamped and approved, and she takes it with a tearful nod. Throughout the day, you notice new signs posted at the market entrances. All cheeses must be weighed thrice before sale. Herbs and additives to be declared before tasting. Violations will result in confiscation and penance. The parchment flutters in the breeze, its ink smudged in places, yet the threat remains clear as a winter sky. You imagine again the stocks, the cold stone against your skin, the laughter of onlookers. Yet you also feel the warmth of the midnight wheels waiting quietly in the dairy hut. The secret cheeses whose value no law can truly capture. That evening, as the sun sinks beyond the hedgerows, and the sky shifts from gold to deep cobalt. You carry your unsold wheels home, in the hush of twilight. The weight on your shoulders feels both heavy and strangely comforting. Inside your cottage, you sit near the hearth and peel back a small piece of cloth from one wheel. You inhale deeply the scent of thyme and fennel, a whisper of summer meadows even in the depth of winter. You close your eyes and remember each step, the gathering of milk, the stirring at dawn, the first faint crack in the curd, the gentle pressing, the patient waiting. You taste a sliver, letting it melt on your tongue. You think of your grandmother's stories, the monk's hidden recipes, the hermit's violet cheese, the neighbor's sick child. Each story lingers like an echo in the dim light dot in this small room. The laws of the land seem to dissolve, replaced by the deeper, older laws of kindness and necessity. You realize that every law, every ordinance, every decree carved in cold ink ultimately bends beneath the quiet persistence of daily life, of hunger, of love, of survival. As the flames flicker lower, you wrap the wheel again and set it on. The shelf. You move to your bed, slipping beneath the heavy wool blanket, the scent of smoke and thyme still clinging to your hair. Your thoughts wander one last time to the Reeves ledger, to the Galtester's staff, to the solemn hall note. Trials. You wonder, did they know, as they penned each line, that they were trying to bind something as fluid and human as milk? Perhaps they believed they could tame the curd, measure the kindness in a wheel of cheese, and weigh the warmth of an open hand. But tonight, as your eyelids grow heavy, you feel certain of one thing. Under moonlight and behind closed shutters, in quiet hearth-lit corners, the human spirit finds ways to breathe free. A small wheel of cheese, pressed in the hush of midnight, becomes an act of soft rebellion, a testament to the gentle resilience of ordinary people. And so you drift into sleep, carried by the warmth of secret cheeses and the promise of dawn beyond. The hedgerows. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. Story 2. The fish that could damn you. Sacred rivers and eel laws of medieval Europe. And now, let's drift into a different time, a different place. Imagine distant bells echoing through fog, the hush of soft footsteps on a damp stone bridge. Tonight, we leave behind the moonlit dairies and slip into another hush-filled chamber of medieval life. *A. Rivers whisper at dawn. You awaken before the sun crests the low hills beyond your small village. The air smells of river mud and wood smoke, a scent as familiar to you as the sound of your own heartbeat. You rise quietly, careful not to disturb the bundled forms of your children sleeping beside the hearth. Outside, the world is still in that gentle twilight between night and day. The sky carries a tender grey-blue hue, the moon still visible like a pale coin drifting west. You listen for the river. Its slow, gurgling murmur drifts through the morning hush as if it, too, is just beginning to stretch and breathe. Your small, wooden boat rests at the water's edge, its hull smoothed by years of gentle scraping against river stones. You run your fingers along its side, feeling each groove and notch, each mark a silent chapter of your life. The eel traps, long woven baskets of willow rods, rest inside, still damp from yesterday's catch. In medieval Europe, rivers were far more than just veins of water slicing through the landscape. They were highways, sacred boundaries, sources of life, and silent witnesses to laws more ancient than any parchment decree. You live near the River Severn, a winding silver ribbon that carries secrets to the sea. For centuries, eels have been a hidden currency. They pay rents, mend disputes, feed entire abbeys through lean winters. In some villages, peasants owe eel rent to their lords. Hundreds of sleek, slippery creatures gathered in woven creels, delivered by moonlight in exchange for land, rights, or safe passage. The laws governing these waters are as winding as the river itself. There are restrictions on the width of traps, the seasons when catching is permitted, even on which river bends belong to which manor. Breaking these laws isn't merely a crime. It is considered an affront to the delicate balance between man and nature, and man and the divine. You push the boat from the muddy bank and climb in, the early mist curling around your shoulders like a shawl. Each oar dip feels like a measured breath, the river replying in soft ripples. Waterfowl lift lazily from the reeds, their wings whispering above your head. By law, you can only set traps from Michaelmas to Candlemas, from late September to early February, but rumors speak of those who secretly fish out of season. Under a moonlit sky, they slip between alder shadows, their traps silent as drifting leaves. If caught, they risk heavy fines, forfeiture of their boat, or worse, public penance at the churchyard with willow rods bound to their wrists. Your grandfather used to say, "The river keeps its own ledgers, every secret sin, every illicit eel, recorded in moonlit reflections and frog calls." When you were a child, he taught you to read the water, how a swirl near the bank might reveal a hidden sandbar, how the scent of wet earth could tell you when eels began their mysterious migrations. Back then, you believed the river was alive, an old spirit humming beneath the lilies. In the hush of dawn, rowing alone, you still feel that presence, a soft pulse under the fog, a low hymn sung in ripples. As you reach a favored bend shaded by willow boughs, you set your first trap, careful to align it with the flow. Your hands move slowly, each knot tied with memory's gentle insistence. You remember your mother's hands beside yours, her voice low and steady as she spoke of eel feasts and fasting days, of gifts left at river shrines to ensure a bountiful season. Eels are peculiar creatures, born in distant Sargasso seas, traveling an oceanic odyssey before slipping into Europe's rivers. Medieval folk believed them to be born from mud itself, that they rose spontaneously from river silt on warm nights. Some monks debated whether eels counted as fish at all. Certain abbeys declared them meatless and permissible even on strict fasting days, to the delight and relief of hungry brothers. Along the river, each village has its own small rituals. Some tie ribbon charms to the willow branches in spring, asking for fair weather and full baskets. Others leave tiny bread offerings on stones near the water's edge, inviting the river spirit's blessing. This morning, you pause after setting the final trap. You sit, hands resting in your lap, listening to the layered symphony, the clink of the boat rope, the hush of reeds bending in breeze, the quiet trickle of distant feeder streams. Your breath slows. You think of the fines inscribed in brittle scrolls at the manor hall. 10 shillings for traps too wide, 2 eels for the prior if caught poaching beyond allotted weirs. Each line, each ink mark, an echo of human attempts to control something as fluid and unknowable as water. Yet here, in this early hush, laws feel far away. The only authority is the soft tug of the current, the moon's pale watch, and your quiet promise to bring something home for your children's supper. As you drift back to shore, you pass under a small wooden footbridge. A figure stands there, the reeve, his cloak drawn tightly, face hidden beneath a wool hood. You exchange a nod, a silent agreement hanging in the mist. Tomorrow, perhaps he will check your traps, count your eels, weigh them against the written law. But this morning, he simply watches the river breathe. You tie up the boat, step onto the dew-soaked bank, and sling your willow creel over your back. Each step home is a slow unfolding of warmth, a hearth beginning to crackle, soft voices stirring in the cottage, the smell of porridge rising in a gentle wave. At the door, your youngest child greets you, eyes bright with sleep's gentle fog. You lift him into your arms, the smell of the river still clinging to your skin. You kiss his forehead and whisper a quiet prayer of thanks to the water beyond the fields. You place the empty creel by the hearth, knowing tomorrow it will be heavy with silver-scaled blessings. You wash your hands in a small basin, the water swirling dark with mud traces, and as you pour a cup of small ale, you hear the river's hush beyond the window. You wonder, as you have countless dawns before, are we the river's keepers, or is it keeping us, recording each gentle trespass and each small mercy? You set down your cup, feeling the soft glow of firelight on your cheek. Outside, the mist thickens again, curling around hedgerows and fading into the day's first birdsong. You breathe deeply, leaning into the warmth and softness, and drift into the quiet rhythms of the day. The eel fare and the gentle murmur of bargains the morning mist has long burned off, leaving the riverbank bathed in a warm, soft glow. The sun rests low and honey-coloured, brushing the tops of willow trees and bouncing off the slow-moving water, like tiny bells of light. You finish tying your last willow creel and sling it over your back. Today is not just another day on the river. Today is the annual eel fair, a gathering that feels both a celebration and a gentle reminder of the ever-present laws that bind your life to the current's slow rhythm. You walk along the narrow path toward the village green, your steps cushioned by damp moss and scattered reeds. In the air drifts a patchwork of smells: wood smoke curling from chimney pots, sweet cider stewing in iron kettles, the brackish tang of wet nets drying in the sun. As you near the green, you hear a low hum, voices blending like distant bees, punctuated now and then by bursts of laughter or the low calls of traders hawking their baskets of eels. Children dart between legs, chasing each other with willow switches, while old women sit under makeshift awnings, their hands working endlessly at wool or nets. At the center of the green stands the eel scale, a large balance made of oiled wood and iron hooks. It is both a symbol and a tool, deciding the worth of each villager's labor with quiet finality. A reeve or steward oversees each weighing, his ledger open, quill flicking gently with each tally. You join the slow-moving line, your creel balanced on your hip. As you wait, you watch other villagers present their catches. Some overflow with long glimmering eels that twist like pale ribbons of moonlight. Others bring only a modest few, caught in secret bends or weedy shallows, each eel handled as carefully as a newborn. Above the crowd flaps a simple banner, a piece of linen dyed, with woad painted with the shape of an eel curving like a sleeping crescent moon. Below it stands the local alewife, offering small clay mugs of spiced cider. You nod as she catches your eye. You have traded with her before a few eels for a warm jug during a cold January morning, when your turn arrives at the scale. You place your creel on the wooden platform, unwrapping the linen covering. The steward peers inside, eyes sharp beneath the brim of his felt hat. He reaches in, lifts one eel by its slick middle, and watches it twist slowly, the sun flashing off its scales. A hush moves through those around you. Everyone feels this moment, the small, collective breath as the steward weighs each creature, checking for undersized specimens or signs of illegal netting. A single, sharp stroke of his quill on the ledger could mean a fine large enough to push a family into hunger. But today, fortune smiles. The steward gives a curt nod, a subtle sign of approval. He motions for his assistant to stamp a small clay token, your proof of fair trade and permission to sell within the village. Relief drifts through you like warm river water around your ankles. With your stamped token tied to your belt, you wander deeper into the fair. Stalls made of rough timber and patched cloth stretch in a crooked circle, each offering something needed for winter: dried herbs tied in tidy bunches, combed wool rolled like thick clouds, woven baskets, chipped pewter spoons, beeswax candles faintly fragrant with honey. Beside the herb stall, a young girl holds up tiny sprigs of marjoram and sweet Sicily, whispering to each customer about the power to charm the eels into traps or soothe a restless child's sleep. You remember your grandmother insisting that marjoram tea would bring dreams of loved ones lost at sea. You buy a small bunch, tucking it into your cloak's pocket. Near the far edge of the green, a group of monks from a nearby priory stand in a shaded corner. Their robes are dusty from the road, and they lean heavily on walking sticks, murmuring quietly among themselves. One brother lifts a small wooden icon, showing the river's patron saint, usually depicted cradling an eel in his arms. Some say, this saint could tame the river's anger and ensure a full creel when the winter hunger bit deepest. Mother with a thin face approaches the monks, her basket nearly empty. She bows low, offering 2 small eels and a clutch of early apples in exchange for a whispered prayer and a splash of holy water on her husband's fishing net. The monk accepts, tracing a slow sign of the cross over her head. Further on, an elderly woman with a weathered face offers woven charms of river rushes. She claims these charms keep the reeve's eyes turned elsewhere, though you suspect her true customers are those hoping for a little luck to slip quietly past the law's watchful gaze among these soft trades and hush-voiced bargains. The eel fair feels less like an official market and more like a sacred ritual. Every touch of an eel's skin, every measured nod at the scale, every whispered blessing carries the weight of generations who have lived and died by the river's breath. You pause to watch a small game played by children. They draw winding rivers in the dust with their fingers and push small pebbles, eel tokens, along the paths. Whoever reaches the sea first wins a twist of sweet dough from a mother's apron pocket. Their laughter rises and fades like ripples against a mossy bank later in the day. A hush falls over the fair as the local lord steward appears on horseback, his mount shod in iron shoes that strike the ground with dull, rhythmic thuds. He rides slowly along the circle, his gaze sweeping over the stalls. The steward is here to collect the lord's share, usually a small portion of every catch, alongside coin tithes and offerings of candles or wool. The villagers part in quiet respect, some bowing their heads, others keeping their eyes on the ground. You clutch your token a little tighter, feeling its clay edges dig gently into your palm. When he reaches you, the steward dismounts, his cloak trailing in the dust. He inspects your creel once more, though he has no real reason, a silent demonstration of authority. You nod, offering him a small eel already set aside for the Lord's table. He takes it without a word, ties it to his saddle, and continues his slow orbit around the fair dot. As the afternoon wanes, you exchange your remaining eels. for a wedge of aged cheese, a new fishing line, and a small woolen cap for your youngest child. Each trade is quiet, deliberate, an unspoken dance of need and gratitude. You linger to watch the sun begin its slow descent beyond the oak grove. Smoke from small cooking fires curls skyward, catching the amber light and weaving into the first evening stars. Somewhere nearby, a fiddler begins to play a slow, mournful tune that winds around the green like a drifting current. An old friend approaches. A man whose left leg is stiff from an accident years ago on a slippery river rock. He carries no eels today, but offers you a carved wooden spoon in exchange for a handful of willow rods. You accept gladly, running your thumb along the smooth handle, feeling the warmth of his careful craft. As twilight deepens, the fare transforms. Torches flicker to life, their flames dancing along the riverbank. Shadows lengthen and blend together until the fair feels like a dreamscape, a place both deeply familiar and strangely otherworldly. The reeve moves among the stalls, his eyes softer now, his pace unhurried. A group of women gather near the water's edge, singing low songs to the rhythm of small wooden drums. Their voices carry across the still surface, echoing like distant bells in this dim light. Old lines blur, the strict market ordinances fade, and for a few quiet hours, the villagers reclaim the river as their own. They share stories of ancestors who claimed to hear eel songs in moonlight, of lovers who met at hidden river bends, of elders who slipped away in old age, their final breath joining the current dot. You sit with your friend near a low fire, sharing the last of your spiced cider. A warm hush settles over your thoughts, each sip drawing you deeper into the quiet dance of flame and shadow. Above you, the stars shimmer between drifting wisps of smoke. You lean back, feeling the damp earth beneath your palms, and think of the river's winding journey, from secret springs high in the hills, past your village's willows, to the open estuary where salt and fresh water embrace. In the hush of this moment you feel small and infinite all at once, like a single ripple in a timeless current dot tomorrow. The laws will return with all their strict edges, scrolls and fines, reeves and ledgers, sanctioned measures and stern inspections. But tonight, under torchlight and starshimmer, the eel fare belongs to the villagers, to the river, to the quiet kinship of hands and hearts. You close your eyes briefly, listening to the fiddle's gentle wail, the crackle of fire, and the soft sigh of the river nearby. In that stillness, you wonder, were the eel laws made to bind you, or to remind you of your place within this greater, flowing world? Perhaps both. Or perhaps the true law is written only in the river's hush, understood in the silent trades and soft laughter between old friends. As the last of the torches burn low, you stand, gathering your small trades and wrapping the marjoram in a corner of your cloak. You clasp your friend's hand in farewell, feeling the strength and warmth beneath calloused skin. You begin the walk home along the moonlit path, each step a gentle echo on the damp ground. The river glimmers quietly to your right, as if guiding you onward. At your cottage door, you pause to listen one last time. A thin mist curls along the edge of the fields, the reeds murmur softly in the breeze. Somewhere far downstream, an owl calls. You push open the door, step inside, and set down your trades, the cheese, the cap, the spoon. You tend the small fire, breathing in its gentle glow, and let your eyes grow heavy. Moonlit nets and the whispered blessings of the river night has settled fully now. The village lies quiet beneath a blanket of stars. their silver light mingling softly with the flickering glow of a few lanterns scattered here and there like fireflies. You wrap your cloak tight around you, stepping softly into the cool hush of evening. The river is darker than ink, its surface smooth as glass, disturbed only by the occasional splash of a jumping fish or the slow ripple of an unseen current. The scent of damp earth and sweet moss rises from the banks, mingling with the faint aroma of burning wood from distant hearths. Tonight, you move quietly, carrying only a small lantern and a bundle of willow rods and netting, for the law forbids fishing for eels after dusk. Officially, the catching of eels is restricted to daylight hours, when the reeves can watch and record the harvest, ensuring every catch is accounted for and every tax duly paid. But you, like many others, know the river's rhythms are not bound by ink or parchment. There are stories whispered in the shadows of those who fish, by moonlight silent, gliding through the reeds, nets cast with reverence, and small offerings, left by the water's edge to appease the unseen spirits. It is said that eels caught under a full moon are charged with a certain magic, able to heal aches, calm restless children, and bring peace to troubled minds as you slip your small boat. Into the water, the lantern's flame wavers gently, casting long, dancing shadows across your hands. You settle in, pulling the oars silently through the dark water, moving towards a favored bend hidden behind a veil of weeping willows. The village's lights fade behind you, replaced by the quiet chorus of night creatures, the soft hoot of an owl, the rustle of small mammals in the undergrowth, the occasional plop of a fish breaking the water's surface. Reaching the bend, you pause to untie a small cloth bundle from your belt. Inside rests a delicate bundle of herbs, mugwort for dreams, rosemary for protection, and a sprig of hawthorn, believed to guard against evil spirits. You place these gently in the water, whispering a soft prayer learned from your grandmother, Spirit of River, Keeper of Secrets, grant your blessing upon these nets and those who tend them. Let no harm come to the waters, nor to those who fish with care and respect. You feel the weight of tradition settle around you like a cloak. The prayers and offerings are not mandated by law, but are sacred customs passed down through generations. A quiet rebellion against the cold. Hard rules written far from this gentle water's edge. With practiced hands, you prepare your net, weaving willow rods into a small trap shaped like a crescent moon. The weaving is slow, meditative, each knot a promise, each curve a memory of those who came before you. Casting the trap into the water, you watch as it slips beneath the surface, its silhouette swallowed by the dark. You imagine the eels winding their way through the reeds and silt, curious and cautious, drawn by the faint scent of fish and herbs. While you wait, you listen to the river's whispered stories. Long ago, it was said, eels were guardians of the threshold between worlds, creatures able to slip unseen between the mortal realm and the land of spirits. Some believed that the river itself was alive, an ancient being who shaped the land with its winding body, and whose moods could bring either bounty or famine. You recall tales told at the hearth, of a woman who once saved her village from drought, by leaving a basket of eels as an offering at the river's source, pleading for mercy. The river swelled soon after, bringing fresh water to the fields and filling the wells once more. Other stories speak of river spirits, who would curse those who overfished or took more than their share. It was said such curses could cause crops to fail, animals to fall ill, or fishermen to lose their way in fog so thick it was as if the world had been swallowed whole. These whispered warnings are why you and others fish with such care, honoring the river's rhythm, taking only what is needed, and always leaving an offering in thanks. After a while, you haul the trap back into the boat. The net is heavier than before, and inside you find a few slender eels, their skin glistening wet and dark like midnight silk. You handle them gently, mindful of their writhing bodies and sharp, slippery heads. A sense of quiet satisfaction fills you, not just from the catch, but from the communion with the river, the shared understanding between you and this ancient waterway. You turn your boat towards home, the lantern's light flickering softly, guiding your slow journey back along the winding river path. The moon has shifted, casting long beams that shimmer on the water like silver ribbons. As you approach the village, you see the faint glow of a few lanterns in the windows, and the sound of low voices drifting on the night air. Your heart softens, with the promise of warmth and rest waiting just beyond the door. Back at your cottage, you unload the catch with practiced care, setting aside the eels meant for trade and those reserved for the healing potions your mother tends. You prepare a small broth, steeping herbs from the riverbank, and settle near the fire. The warmth coaxing sleep's slow approach. You think again of the laws governing this life, the scrolls sealed with wax, the reeve's watchful gaze, the strict times and limits set for fishing. But beneath all of these official rules lies a deeper, softer law, one written not in ink, but in the rhythm of water, the memory of ancestors, and the quiet respect between humans and nature. In the hush of your home, as sleep pulls you gently downward, you feel a profound connection to this slow, flowing world. The river's song becomes your lullaby, the eel's silver bodies like whispered promises of renewal and grace. Tomorrow, you will rise again to meet the river's slow breath, honoring its ancient currents and the delicate balance that sustains all life. And so, beneath the soft glow of stars and the steady pulse of the river, you drift into sleep, carried on the gentle current of forgotten laws and enduring traditions. Soft reflection, the laws of medieval rivers and their elusive eels were never merely about control or commerce. They were the delicate threads weaving together human survival, spiritual reverence, and the natural world's quiet persistence. These laws remind us how even the smallest creatures, like the slippery eel, can shape entire communities, binding them in shared respect and whispered stories beneath the moons. Watchful Eye. Story 3. The Silent Guardians, Medieval, Laundry, and the rituals of cleanliness dawn among the washhouses. You awake gently to the soft grey light filtering through a small window, its dusty panes etched with faint patterns of frost and rain. Outside, the village stirs slowly beneath a quilt of mist that hugs the cobblestones and slips softly into the narrow alleys. The scent of damp linen and wood. Smoke lingers faintly in the air, a whisper of the day's coming tasks. You rise carefully, mindful of the quiet stillness that holds the house, and pull your woolen cloak close about your shoulders. Today, like many before, will begin beside the river at the communal washhouse, where the women of the village gather not only to cleanse their clothes but to weave the fabric of daily life itself. The washhouse is a simple stone structure with a sloping roof, nestled near the river's edge where the water runs cold and clear. The wooden troughs are lined with smooth river stones, worn soft by centuries of use. Here, the clothes of the village are beaten, scrubbed, and rinsed with careful hands, each movement steeped in ritual and necessity. You step quietly among the women who are already at work, their voices low and steady, punctuated by the rhythmic slap of wet linen against stone. The air is thick with steam and the faint temps of soapwort and lye, mingled with the earthy scent of river moss. Each piece of clothing tells a story. A child's linen shirt with faint stains from play, a mother's woolen shawl frayed at the edges, a fine collar from the manor lord's steward, still bearing traces of wine and smoke. Washing in this place is no mere chore, it is a ceremony. The washing women share news, pass down wisdom, and offer quiet comfort to one another. Their hands are rough and patient, their eyes reflecting the slow rhythms of river and village alike. As you dip your hands into the cold water, you feel the pulse of countless generations before you, women who have cleaned these very stones, who have scrubbed these same linens, who have shared laughter and tears beneath the same low wooden beams. The day will unfold slowly, each moment unfolding like a soft bloom, the dipping and wringing, the spreading of clothes on sun-drenched stones, the gathering of worn threads for mending, and the hushed prayers whispered for clean clothes and healthy children. This is the quiet heart of the village's survival, where water, soap, and steady hands meet in gentle communion. Asterisk, you settle beside a wooden trough, its surface darkened by years of water and weather. The water inside glimmers faintly in the morning light, clear and cold, smelling faintly of earth and soapwort. You run your fingers along the smooth river stones lining the bottom, feeling their cool weight beneath the shallow flow around you. The women work with steady rhythm, their motions fluid and unhurried, almost like a slow dance in harmony with the river's own pace. One woman, her sleeves rolled high, beats a linen shirt against the stones with firm but gentle taps, the sound a soft, muted drum. Another dips a bundle of woolen cloth, turning it carefully, allowing the water to seep into every fold. You join in, taking a piece of worn cloth, a child's smock, faded but lovingly patched, and begin the slow, familiar process of washing. The linen is stiff at first, but as you work the soapy tin-fused water through the fibers, it softens, the grime slowly loosening like the fading of a distant dream. Nearby, a mother cradles an infant swaddled in clean linen, humming a soft lullaby that drifts over the wash-house like a gentle breeze. Her voice is low, steady, and soothing, a thread of comfort woven through the hum of water and labor. Between scrubbing and rinsing, stories unfold quietly. An older woman recalls how her grandmother once used a mixture of crushed herbs and ashes to brighten linen, a secret recipe guarded jealously through the ages. A younger girl listens intently, her eyes wide with the slow wonder of learning the small miracles of everyday life. The washing women share more than labor. They exchange news of births and deaths, weddings planned and postponed, crops coming in late or early rains that soften the earth too much. The wash-house is a sanctuary, a place where time slows, and the burdens of the day find brief respite in the soothing cadence of water and soap. At one point, a gentle breeze slips through. An open window, carrying the scent of fresh hay and wildflowers. The breeze stirs the damp clothes hung on wooden poles, setting them to flutter softly like silent prayers to the open sky. The sun climbs higher, warming the stone floor, coaxing the wet cloths to dry. You watch a strip of linen catch the light, its folds glowing faintly, almost translucent like a pale sail caught in a slow current of air. In this slow, simple place, the boundaries between work and rest blur. Each task is a meditation, each breath a quiet celebration of life's small continuities. As you finish wringing out the last piece of fabric, your hands numb from cold water but warmed by purpose, you pause to look around, faces lined by years, and sun eyes soft with shared understanding, hands worn yet tender all, held together by the river's song and the timeless dance of cleanliness and care. You gather the clothes to hang them on the poles outside, each piece a testament to quiet, endurance and hope. And as the day stretches onward, you wonder softly, what stories might these linens carry if they could speak? What histories are held in their folds, woven into threads by hands long since gone? You leave the wash house with a calm heart, the scent of soapwort lingering on your skin, and the gentle pulse of the river still echoing in your ears. Asterisk, as you step outside, the air feels crisp against your damp hands, carrying the faint hum of village life waking slowly around you. Laundry flutters softly on lines stretched between wooden poles, the cloths dancing in a languid rhythm with the gentle morning breeze. Nearby, children play at the river's edge, their laughter light and fleeting like birdsong, as a woman carefully pins a fine linen shift, its pale fabric catching the sunlight like a fragile cloud. You take a moment to watch the ripples across the waters, surface small waves catching the light in a soft, ever-changing pattern, and you notice how the river itself seems to participate. In the day's slow unfolding, its gentle flow a constant, reassuring presence at the village square. The baker is just lighting his oven, and the smell of warm bread begins to mingle with the fresh scents of the river and the drying linens. You breathe in deeply, savoring the quiet harmony of these simple sounds and smells, each one a stitch in the fabric of the day. Returning to your task, you begin to mend a small tear in the woolen cloak you brought with you, your needle moving steadily, thread looping patiently through the thick fabric. Each stitch is a quiet act of care, a gentle reminder of the unseen labor that keeps your world whole. Nearby, an older woman crochets delicate lace trims for a new bride's gown, her fingers nimble and sure despite the years. She hums a tune you don't recognize, but its melody carries a softness that settles over the group like a gentle blanket. You find your thoughts drifting to the quiet, rituals tied to cleanliness, not just the physical act of washing, but the deeper sense of renewal it brings. Clean clothes mean fresh starts, small ceremonies of daily rebirth amid the hardships of medieval life. This is a world where water and cloth, soapwort and sweat intertwine with hopes and prayers. A clean shirt might be the difference between respect and shame at the manor hall, just as a mended cloak can mean warmth against the biting cold. Your hands move slowly, weaving new life into worn fabric, and you feel the patient rhythm of generations folding into this moment. It is a silent conversation across time between you and those who have washed, repaired, and cared before. The sun climbs higher still, gilding the edges of clouds and warming your back. You lean back briefly, eyes closing, listening to the chorus. Of the village, the soft murmur of voices, the clatter of carts, the occasional bark of a dog. In this quiet pause, you feel connected to the river, to your neighbors, and to the endless cycle of renewal that threads through every life here. And as you rise to gather the last of the drying linens, you wonder softly, how many stories have these stones witnessed? How many whispered hopes, secret tears, and gentle laughter have mingled here with the scent of wet cloth and river air. Asterisk, the afternoon sun casts a warm glow over the village, and the wash house is bathed in a golden light that filters through narrow windows, dust motes dancing lazily in the beams. The steady murmur of the river beyond blends with the quiet conversations and soft splashes of water. You watch as a group of women gather around a wooden table, carefully sorting through piles of freshly laundered linens. Each piece is folded. With care, their edges are lined, as if in silent respect for the hands that made them clean again. One woman, her face framed by a worn linen coif, pulls out a small bundle of herbs, lavender and rosemary tied with a strip of faded cloth. She places them inside a pillowcase, a tradition meant to lull children into peaceful sleep and ward off restless spirits nearby. A young girl imitates the motions she has observed countless times, scrubbing at a small rag with earnest concentration. Her cheeks flush with the effort, and a smile breaks across her face when the fabric begins to brighten beneath her hands. The elder women watch her with soft amusement, their eyes reflecting the weight of years spent in this very place, teaching and learning, passing down the silent knowledge of cleansing and care. The river's embrace and the secrets of soap worth. The morning begins again with a faint wash of pale light through the mist, softening the edges of the village and its stone walls. You step out with a quiet breath, the air cool and tinged with the scent of damp earth and budding greenery. Your feet find the familiar path to the river, the ground soft beneath your worn leather shoes, pressed down by countless footsteps before yours. Alongside the water, the willow branches dip low, their slender leaves whispering secrets to the current. The river here flows slow and steady, a gentle pulse that has marked the heartbeat of this village for as long as memory holds. Its surface reflects the delicate morning sky, clouds drifting lazily, mirrored like whispers of forgotten days. You pause to run your hand through the cool water, feeling the subtle resistance of the current and the smooth stones beneath. This water is not just a tool for washing. It is a life-giving force, a silent partner in the ritual of renewal nearby. The wash house stands like a quiet sentinel, its rough stone walls softened by creeping ivy and moss. Smoke from nearby hearths curls upward, mingling with the scent of wet wood and fresh herbs hung to dry. Inside, the women prepare the sopwörter, humble plant with pale green leaves and delicate white flowers, carefully gathering and pounding its leaves to release their gentle cleansing properties. Soapwort is the village's secret, a natural soap passed down through generations, prized for its kindness to delicate fabrics and skin alike. The pounding echoes softly, a rhythmic thump that blends with the murmur of voices and the splash of water. This is a song of labor, slow and deliberate, each beat a reminder of the patient care woven into every wash. You watch as a woman lifts a wooden bowl of sudsy water, dipping a fine linen cloth and working it tenderly between her fingers. The foam rises and falls like tiny waves, soft and quiet, carrying away the dust and wear of everyday life around you. The air is thick with story tales of winter cold and summer drought, of children's laughter and the slow march of seasons. Each thread of cloth is more than fabric. It is memory and hope woven tightly into the texture of existence. Outside, the river continues its endless journey, carrying away the remnants of the old day and bringing in the promise of new beginnings. The rhythm of water and washing is a gentle meditation, a dance of cleansing and renewal that echoes through time. As the day unfolds, you feel yourself carried along on this slow current, each breath a quiet offering to the timeless ritual of care and cleansing. The sun rises higher, filtering through the wash house's small windows and casting warm, golden pools of light across the stone floor. You move quietly among the women, whose hands are steady and sure, guiding damp cloth through gentle suds made from the crushed soapwort leaves. The scent is faint, a soft green sweetness mingled with the fresh earthiness of river water. It fills the space like a whispered lullaby, calming both body and spirit nearby. An elder woman leans close to a younger girl, teaching her the subtle art of rinsinga, delicate dance of squeezing and releasing, careful not to stretch or tear the fragile linen. The girl's hands tremble slightly, but her eyes shine with concentration, as if learning a secret language passed down through generations. Outside, the river murmurs steadily, a constant companion to these quiet labors. Its flow is a slow pulse, steady and reassuring, carrying away dirt and worry alike. Sometimes you catch the flash of a fish beneath the surface, a flicker of life that reminds you of the world's hidden currents beneath everyday stillness. Between tasks, stories rise softly among the women, tales of long winters, of cloth mended by candlelight, of garments saved for weddings and christenings. Each story is told not in haste but with the reverence of a shared memory, unfolding gently like the folds of a well-worn gown. A small fire crackles nearby, where a kettle of herbal tea steeps, filling the air with hints of chamomile and mint. You sip slowly, savoring the warmth as it spreads through your hands and down your throat. A quiet comfort amid the steady rhythm of work. The afternoon light softens, and you pause to rest by the riverbank, watching the sunlight dance on the water's surface. You think about the countless hands that have washed here before you, each one part of a long chain of care and renewal. How many mornings have begun like this? How many linens have carried the hopes and fears of those who wore them? You wonder if the river remembers them all, holding their stories beneath its endless flow. As the day wanes, you gather the clean clothes, folding them with gentle care. The fabric feels soft beneath your fingers, a testament to patience and quiet devotion. You leave the wash-house behind, the soft murmur of water and voices fading into the evening hush. The village prepares to settle, and the river continues its slow, ceaseless journey into night. Asterisk, as twilight deepens, the village bathes in the cool blue glow of dusk. You find yourself drawn once more to the river's edge, where the last wisps of sunlight catch the ripples in a silver dance. The air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of damp moss and wood smoke from hearth fires beginning to glow. Nearby, a small group of villagers gather around a flickering fire, their faces softened by the warm light and quiet conversation. They speak in hushed tones of the day's labor and the simple pleasures of freshly cleaned clothes, hanging like pale flags against the darkening sky. A woman unwraps a bundle of herbs, releasing a faint, calming fragrance of lavender and rosemary that mingles with the evening air. These herbs are more than scent. They are talismans against restless nights and unwelcome spirits, placed carefully in the folds of garments destined for sleep. You watch as an elder gently folds a linen sheet, her hands steady and deliberate. She hums a soft, wordless tune, a melody as old as the river itself, passed down in silence between generations. It is a song of water and earth, of cleansing and renewal, a lullaby for the day's end. The quiet rhythms of the village settle around you, a tapestry woven from small sounds, the crackle of fire, the rustle of fabric, the distant call of an owl. Each breath you take feels slow and full, wrapped in the gentle embrace of this shared moment. You linger by the riverbank, feeling the coolness seep into your bones and the steady pulse of the water beneath your feet. In this stillness, you sense the deep bond between the villagers and the river, a connection that shapes their lives as surely as the turning of the seasons. The river does not rush, and neither do you. Here, in the hush of evening, time stretches, like the flowing water, endless and serene, as stars begin to twinkle overhead. You gather your cloak and prepare to return home. The clean linens, folded and fragrant, rest like quiet promises of comfort and care. Walking back through the village's narrow lanes, you feel a profound sense of peace, a knowing that tomorrow will bring its own rhythms, its own small acts of devotion and renewal, and beneath the vast, silent sky, you wonder softly, how do these simple rituals ripple through the lives of those who came before? What stories remain hidden in the folds of every clean garment, waiting to be told? Asterisk, as night deepens, the village settles into a hushed stillness, broken only by the occasional murmur of a distant owl or the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. The river's surface glistens faintly under the moon's pale light, a quiet mirror reflecting the steady dance of stars. You sit beside a small fire near the wash-house, the warmth soft against the chill of night. Nearby, a pot simmers gently, its herbal steam rising in delicate spirals that catch the moonlight like fleeting silver threads. The women have long since returned to their homes, their daily labors complete, but the echoes of their presence linger. In the faint scent of soapwort and lavender, in the faintly damp cloths hung carefully to dry, in the memory of steady hands and shared stories, you run your fingers over a folded linen cloth, feeling the softness that comes from patient care. It carries not only the scent of herbs and river water, but also the intangible weight of countless small acts of kindness and resilience. In this quiet moment, you reflect on the deeper meaning woven into these everyday rituals. Cleanliness is more than physical, it is a subtle promise of order and care amid a world often uncertain and harsh. The linens carry the touch of the river and the hands that tended them. They are talismans against hardship, gentle shields woven from soap and water, prayer and labor. You think of the village children wrapped in these soft fabrics, drifting into sleep, soothed by the quiet magic of clean linen and herbal scents. The rituals that began with dawn's first light now cradled them through the night. As you gaze up at the endless sky, the slow turning of stars feels like a lullaby sung softly across centuries, connecting you to the countless souls who have lived and loved, worked and rested along these same riverbanks. The river continues to flow, steady and eternal, a silent witness to all that passes, the quiet stories of cloth and care, of water and renewal, of a life lived in gentle rhythm with the world. And so, wrapped in the deep calm of night, you drift toward rest, carried on the slow, endless current of history and hope. Asterisk, threads of time, mending memory and the quiet. The Gusidon rises slowly again, pale and gentle, brushing the village rooftops with soft light. The wash-house is still quiet, resting from yesterday's labors, but soon its stones will feel the familiar rhythm of water and voices once more. Story 4. The Law of the Left Shoe. Peculiar sumptuary rules and social signs treading carefully the world of medieval dress and log good evening, friends. Settle in, dim your lights, and wrap yourself in a warm blanket. Tonight, we drift slowly into a world where even the shoes you wear could whisper stories of rank, rule, and quiet rebellion. In medieval Europe, clothing was far more than a personal choice. It was a language, a signal, and often a law. These rules, called sumptuary laws, governed who could wear what, down to the color of a cloak or the fabric of a shoe. They were designed to maintain social order, to mark status clearly and visibly, and to keep the boundaries between classes distinctly drawn. Imagine a quiet town square on a misty morning. The cobblestones are slick with dew, and faint traces of smoke curl lazily from chimneys. You step carefully through the market, your feet clad in sturdy leather shoes, but not just any shoes. The left shoe you wear is a symbol, as much a part of your identity as your family name. Laws dictated that certain classes might only wear shoes of a particular style or color, or that the direction of a shoe's buckle marked a person's rank or allegiance. For example, in some regions, only nobles could wear pointed shoes, while commoners were limited to round toes. In others, the nobility might sport elaborate decorations on their left shoe, signaling their power without a single word. This was a world where your shoes could betray you or protect you, depending on how well you knew the rules. As you walk past wooden stalls laden with bolts of cloth and bundles of dyed fabric, you notice the careful craftsmanship of the shoemakers. Booth. A skilled artisan works slowly, shaping leather with practiced hands, aware that each stitch could either grant favor or bring censure if it failed to respect the law. The laws were strict, but often confusing, layered with local customs and changing edicts. Some rulers issued decrees forbidding the wearing of fur or silk by those outside the aristocracy, while others banned certain colors or embroidery. It was a delicate balance, one that could tip a person's life toward privilege or punishment. Beyond the practical reasons, these laws carried a deeper weight. They enforced a sense of order in a world where identity was often tied to appearance, and where the fabric you wore could shape your very place in society. As you pause to examine a pair of finely crafted shoes displayed on a wooden shelf, you might wonder, how did people navigate such strict and strange rules? How did they find freedom in the folds of fabric and the soles of their shoes? The answers lie in quiet acts of defiance, clever adaptation, and the slow weaving of change beneath the surface of rigid order. Tonight, we step lightly into this world, listening closely to the soft footsteps of history's forgotten laws. Asterisk. Good evening, friends. Dim your lights, settle beneath a soft blanket, and breathe deeply as we step slowly into a world where clothing spoke quietly but clearly, a language shaped by law, custom, and silent social codes. Tonight, we listen closely to the footsteps of those who once walked medieval streets, their shoes marking their place in a world ruled by strange, subtle rules. Imagine yourself standing in a small medieval town at dawn. The cobblestone streets are damp with morning mist, the scent of wood smoke faint in the air. The village slowly stirs, the baker lighting his oven, the blacksmith setting his tools, the shoemaker already at work by the glow of a lantern. Your gaze falls first to the shoes, humble, worn, yet telling stories deeper than words. These are no ordinary shoes. They carry the weight of law, custom, and careful design. Sumptuary laws govern not just what people wore, but how they presented themselves, and even a single detail, the left shoe, its shape or decoration, could reveal one's status, wealth, or occupation. Such laws existed throughout medieval Europe, crafted by monarchs and local lords alike, intended to maintain clear social boundaries. These laws dictated who might wear velvet or silk, whose shoes could be dyed bright colors, or whose boots could bear silver buckles. They worked as both a means of control and a language of identity, shaping society's quiet dance of appearance and rank. The idea of regulating dress may feel strange today, But in a time before photography, newspapers, or digital profiles, clothing was the primary visual language of identity. The way you dressed, the colors you wore, even the direction of your shoe buckle, could broadcast your social standing without a single word. You walk along the street, your left foot stepping softly on the stones, your shoe itself an emblem in this intricate system. Perhaps it is pointed and finely stitched, signaling the privilege of a nobleman, or perhaps it is rounded and sturdy, reflecting the practicality required of a tradesperson. The shoemaker's workshop beckons. Inside, warm amber light spills over wooden beams and leather hides. The shoemaker's hands move with quiet precision, shaping supple leather into forms that must meet not only the wearer's comfort, but the strict codes of law. Each stitch, each curve, each decorative flourish is laden with meaning and consequence. Across the street, women gather near the market, their brightly dyed garments marked by law and custom. Sumptuary laws sometimes extended to fabrics and colors, certain shades of purple or gold reserved for royalty or the very wealthy. The strictness varied, but the message was clear. Appearance was order. You observe a young apprentice carefully, pulling a shoe from its last, inspecting the sole for wear. His master watches silently, knowing that even the smallest error in crafting could lead to social confusion or worse. But rules like these were never absolute. Beneath the surface of rigid codes, people found ways to express individuality and resistance. Some wore forbidden colors in small accents. Others adjusted the length of a shoe's point just enough to skirt the line of law. These subtle gestures were quiet rebellions, small footprints left on the fabric of medieval life. As you walk onward, you hear the clatter of wooden shoes in the village square and the soft rustling of embroidered cloaks. The marketplace buzzes quietly with life, each person a participant in this slow, layered dance of law, appearance, and identity. The sun climbs slowly over the rooftops, casting a warm golden light across the village square. You find yourself drifting toward the market stalls, where merchants display bolts of rich fabric, deep blues, vivid reds, and shimmering silks that seem to catch and hold the light like small treasures. Yet, even these colors carry meaning beyond mere beauty. Certain dyes and materials were reserved for the highborn, while others, no matter how bright or finely woven, remained forbidden for those of humble birth. You watch as a man carefully adjusts the cuff of his sleeve, the fine embroidery a silent declaration of status. The townsfolk around him nod with respectful recognition. His garments, down to his shoes, tell a story of lineage and privilege. This world, though bound by strict rules, pulses with subtle acts of negotiation. People found quiet ways to express themselves, a flash of color hidden beneath a cloak, a daring shoe buckle that hints at wealth, or a fabric chosen not for its legality, but for its feel and comfort. You recall the story of King Edward III, who, in the 14th century, enacted sumptuary laws to curb extravagance and reinforce social order. His decrees forbade commoners from wearing silk, velvet, or fur materials reserved for the nobility. Violators risked fines, confiscation of goods, or worse. Yet, people found ways to bend these laws. In some villages, a well-placed stitch or an embroidered emblem could pass unnoticed, a quiet defiance stitched into the very fabric of daily life. The laws extended beyond clothing and shoes to accessories like hats, gloves, and even jewelry. A velvet hat adorned with a feather might be a mark of rank, a silver ring reserved for the wealthy alone. The medieval world was a tapestry woven with threads of law and culture, each thread carefully chosen and laden with meaning. Back at the shoemaker's bench, you watch as a customer inspects a pair of shoes. The left shoe, slightly longer than the right, its pointed toe a subtle indication of the wearer's social standing. The craftsman explains the care taken to ensure the shoe complies with local law while offering comfort and style. You pause to consider the significance of such details. In a society where literacy was not universal and where face-to-face encounters mattered greatly, these visual cues were vital. A misstep in dress could lead to misunderstanding, suspicion, or social disgrace beyond the streets. In the grand halls of the aristocracy, these rules took on even more elaborate forms. Some laws regulated not only material but also the way garments were worn. The length of a cloak's train, the height of a hat's brim, even the direction in which a shoe's buckle faced could be matters of law and custom. One curious example comes from Italy, where some city-states dictated that the nobility's shoe buckles faced outward, while commoners' buckles faced inward, a small but telling symbol of social division. Such laws were not static. They evolved with time and place, reflecting shifting politics, economies, and cultural trends. At times, they tightened during periods of upheaval or relaxed when rulers sought favor with certain groups. Despite their apparent rigidity, sumptuary laws were often the subject of negotiation and contestation. They reveal a medieval world deeply concerned with order and identity, but also with creativity and subtle resistance. Steps of defiance, hidden meanings, and quiet rebellions. Good evening again, dear friend. As you lie back and feel the gentle weight of your blanket, let us drift deeper into the medieval village, this time following the subtle, often invisible, paths of quiet defiance. Picture the same cobblestone square just before dawn. Mist curls like a soft veil above the stones, and a single lantern flickers near the shoemaker's workshop door. In that flickering glow, secrets whisper. The law of the left shoe was meant to draw a line, a visible marker of who belonged where. But as long as there were laws, there were those who bent them, not with loud revolt, but with small, intricate acts of courage and creativity. Imagine a young merchant's daughter rising before the village rooster cries. She holds a slender needle and a spool of thread dyed a blue too rich for her family's standing. She works in silence, adding a tiny embroidered swirl just inside the edge of her left shoe, a hidden rebellion, a symbol of her quiet longing for freedom and self-expression. When she steps out into the morning light, no one sees this secret mark. The village folk greet her as usual, nodding politely, assuming she walks in strict obedience. Yet with every step, her hidden swirl pulses with life, a secret only she knows. Elsewhere, a baker in the early hush of morning prepares dough in the warm glow of his hearth. His shoes, plain and practical, bare soles he has quietly altered. The left sole holds a tiny carved cross, a token of gratitude to the saints, or perhaps a charm against misfortune, though the law forbids such private signs in footwear. The baker feels it beneath his foot each day, a small comfort, a grounding prayer in a nearby alley. A group of young apprentices share whispered jokes as they lace up shoes with extra points officially reserved for higher ranks. By law, these shoes should not touch common ground in their hands. But in these hidden corners, rules soften, if only for a heartbeat. When market day comes, they swap these pointed shoes for simpler ones, each boy slipping into a shared fantasy of nobility, just for a moment. Laughter rings softly against the walls, fading into the morning hum. Sumptuary laws did not stop at shoes, of course. They extended into sleeves and collars, into fur linings and hat feathers. Yet shoes, so close to the earth, so intimately connected to each step, carried their own special weight. In the shadows of these rules, communities found subtle ways to maintain warmth and connection. Old women taught young girls to stitch flowers into their petticoats, hidden gardens of defiance that would bloom only in private. Tailors shared secret stitches passed down like lullabies, knowing which thread might slip past the inspector's eye. As the day unfolds, you walk through the market, the secret lives of shoes humming beneath you. You see a carpenter's daughter pause by a fabric stall, her eyes bright as she fingers a forbidden silk ribbon. She does not buy it today, perhaps tomorrow, or perhaps she will save for months, just for the small thrill of slipping it unseen into a shoe's lining. A nobleman passes by in fine crimson boots, the law's favorite child. But even he holds small secrets, an extra fold of cloth tucked inside to protect a family heirloom coin, or a protective charm sewn into his lining to ward off curses and misfortune from rivals. Asterisk. The market square begins to thrum with life, each person drifting through as though in a soft, waking dream. You notice how, even in this structured world of laws and decrees, small acts of defiance bloom like wildflowers between paving stones. A washerwoman sets down her heavy basket of linens and pauses to adjust her shoes. Her left shoe's sole is slightly thicker than the right, a quiet adaptation against the hard stones that would wear her feet raw. By law, she should have kept them identical and simple, but her small change protects her and allows her to keep moving. Nearby, a musician tunes his lute beneath an awning, his fingers deft and calloused. On his left shoe, a faint smudge of ochre paint marks a tiny flower, a private ode to his mother's garden, which he has carried with him since childhood. No official would notice this splash of color, but he knows it is there. It keeps him company during long days of wandering from town to town in a narrow alley just beyond the market. A seamstress tucks herself into a doorway, her eyes watchful. She trades not only in cloth and thread, but in tiny rebellions, stitching secret linings, smuggling bits of color into otherwise plain tunics, creating patterns visible only to the wearer. Sometimes she adds a single stripe of colored thread, running along the inside of a shoe's tongue, a thread that will never see the light of day. But the person who wears it will feel it against their skin and remember that they are more than their assigned station, more than the sum of rules, and finds dots after the stalls close and carts roll away. The square becomes a stage for a different kind of gathering. Young villagers slip out, their daily obligations finished, and gather in quiet corners to share songs and stories. You watch them slip off their shoes to rest their tired feet. Underneath layers of dirt and wear, there are stories pressed into. Each soul a hurried chase through the orchard, a moment of laughter by the riverbank, a secret meeting in the barn loft. The shoes cradle all of this, like memory boxes carried from day to day. An older man, the village potter, joins them. His left shoe is patched many times over, each patch a different shade and texture. In this community, his patched shoe is an unspoken badge of perseverance. While laws might forbid certain cloths or shapes, they cannot forbid the quiet dignity of a life held together by careful hands as they sit together under the first stars. You hear a girl softly humming a lullaby as she mends a small tear in her slipper. She tucks a tiny bead, a gift from a traveling merchant, inside the lining, a small charm for luck. It is such a tiny thing, nearly weightless, but to her it is as grand as a crown. The moon rises, silver and calm. A gentle breeze moves through the alley, lifting strands of hair, tugging at loose sleeves. The group begins to drift home, each person slipping their shoes back on like old friends. Through all these small moments, the hush of mending, the thrill of secret color, the shared warmth of hidden defiance, the people weave themselves quietly into the fabric of their world, one careful step at a time. Asterisk as the last echoes of laughter fade into the night. You follow the potter along the narrow lane back to his small cottage. The lantern he carries swings gently, casting golden halos on the worn stones beneath his feet. Each step is deliberate, steady, as though he is carrying not only his own weight, but also the soft burdens of many seasons past. Inside his home, the potter removes his patched left shoe and sets it by the hearth, turning it carefully so it can dry by the warmth of the fire. The shoe, with its many mended layers, almost seems to sigh in relief. It seems easing into rest. The potter gazes at it for a moment, fingers lightly brushing the frayed edges. Each patch tells a story, one sown during a harsh winter when trade was slow, another added after a long journey delivering pots to a distant village. He remembers a patch sown hurriedly during a spring flood, when he had to cross rising waters to save his wares. These patches are not decorative by law or fashion, yet they stand as his own quiet heraldry. To him, they are more precious than any fine velvet or gilded buckle worn by a lord. Meanwhile, beyond the potter's quiet home, the village winds down into its deep hush. A young farm boy curls up on a straw mattress, his shoes placed carefully at the foot of his bed. Earlier that day, he had scratched a tiny star inside the lining of his left shoe using a nail, a secret charm to guide him safely through long days in the fields, in another house. A merchant's wife removes her elegant slippers, setting them on a carved wooden stand. She traces the delicate embroidery hidden beneath the tongue, a thin line of golden thread, barely visible. This thread was a gift from her mother, sown during the woman's first year of marriage, a quiet wish for prosperity and strength that she carries with every step. Across the village, a blacksmith's apprentice polishes his heavy boots under moonlight. By law, his boots must remain undecorated and plain. Yet inside the heel of his left boot, he has tucked a tiny scrap of red cloth, a token of his childhood friend who left for a distant city. He never speaks of it, but each time he feels it press against his foot, he remembers laughter echoing. In the forge, the smell of coal smoke, the warmth of simple companionship, you sense that these hidden stories swirl around the village like gentle night winds, unseen yet deeply felt. Though the sumptuary laws stand firm in parchment and decree, human hearts find small cracks through which to slip soft dreams and quiet acts of independence. Outside, the moon stands watch as the world settles deeper into sleep. Shoes rest by doorways, each pair a guardian of countless secret rebellions and tender hopes. Tomorrow they will awaken and carry their owners once more through a world of markets and muddy paths, of careful greetings and silent defiance. And as you breathe slowly in your own quiet space, you, too, may feel the echo of these footsteps, each soft act of courage, each small thread of beauty, weaving a gentle warmth across centuries. Asterisk, by the time dawn's pale fingers begin to stroke the rooftops, the village's hidden rebellions are already stirring from their quiet resting places. Echoes in the dust, legacy, memory, and the quiet footsteps forward. Good evening once again, dear friend. As you settle deeper under your blanket, The hush of night presses softly around you, like gentle hands smoothing a sheet. Let us now drift even further beyond the village lanes, beyond the workshops, into the long echoes left by every quiet footstep. Imagine a dusty road winding away from the village. Long after the last lanterns have been dimmed, long after laws have shifted, and kingdoms have fallen, the shape of each footstep remains, pressed like faint signatures into the soil. Years and decades pass. The cobblestones of the square are worn smoother, the workshops change hands, the market awnings fade. Yet somewhere in a dark corner of a chest, a pair of shoes lies carefully wrapped in linen. Perhaps they belong to the shoemaker's granddaughter, or the merchant's youngest son. These shoes are kept, not because they are grand or costly, but because they carry a memory, the gentle curve of a father's careful stitching, a mother's secret embroidered swirl, a sister's pressed violet. Hidden in the lining dot in the silence of the chest, these shoes hold more than shape and leather. They hold the hush of evenings spent by the fire, the steady sound of rain on the roof, the gentle heartbeat of a life once lived slowly and thoughtfully, far beyond the village. In a town where scholars gather to read and write by candlelight, an old scribe runs a careful hand along a roll of parchment describing sumptuary laws from centuries past. His ink-stained fingers hover over the lists, colors forbidden, heel heights regulated, pointed toes permitted only to certain ranks. He pauses, and in that moment he senses the lives behind each decree, the small rebellions, the quiet sacrifices, the human warmth that no law could truly erase. The scribe sighs softly and returns to his work. In the margin, he writes a tiny note. Behind every law, a heartbeat. In another place, a traveling singer shares old songs in a smoky hall. One verse tells of a village girl who embroidered a secret pattern in her left shoe so her beloved could recognize her among the festival dancers. The song is wistful and slow, winding through the air like a gentle breeze. Though no one remembers her name, the listeners lean in closer, imagining the shimmer of forbidden thread beneath her skirt. The shy glance across the crowded square. Beyond even these faint songs and scribbled notes, the echoes ripple quietly through time. A modern shoemaker, perhaps centuries later, feels a sudden urge to add a small flourish to a hidden seam, a simple swirl of stitching no one else will see. He cannot explain why. He only knows it feels right, as though answering a soft call from a distant, dust-covered past. The legacy of these shoes, these laws, and these acts of quiet defiance is not one of grand monuments or official chronicles. Instead, it lives in small moments, a mother teaching her child to tie laces, a traveler tucking a lucky charm beneath a sole, an old woman pressing a scrap of fabric to her heart before sewing it into a lining dot. And so, as you lie in the gentle darkness, you might imagine all these lives and stories layered softly atop one another. The village girl with her hidden swirl, the baker with his carved cross, the potter's many patches, the merchant's secret thread of gold, all of them walking side by side, their steps weaving an invisible path beyond fields and centuries. You may wonder, what small signs do we leave today, hidden in our own lives? A note tucked in a pocket, a ring slipped onto a finger, a quiet thought repeated before sleep. These are the modern echoes of old shoes, carried forward in soft defiance and private love. The medieval laws of cloth and leather have long since faded from parchment and punishment, but the heartbeat beneath them, the desire to express, to remember, to gently push against walls, hums quietly still, like a lullaby carried on the wind. And so we close this chapter, not with an ending, but with a soft question that drifts like a lantern on a quiet river. What quiet echo do you carry in your steps? Story 5. The bread inspectors, crumbs, crusts, and the laws of the medieval ovendon in the bakehouse. The first loaf. Good evening, again, dear friend. As you settle deeper into your blanket, let us wander to a new corner of medieval life, one filled with warmth, soft dough, and the patient crackling of morning ovens. Tonight, we step inside the bakehouse. Imagine the village before sunrise, wrapped in a blue-grey hush. The stars still shimmer faintly above the sloping roofs, while a few lanterns sway quietly along narrow lanes. The air is cool and damp, carrying the earthy scent of moss and dew. But from one low stone building, a gentle glow seeps through wooden shutters, the first hint of warmth in a world still half-dash asleep. This is the bakehouse, where the baker has already been at work for hours. Inside, the air feels alive with heat and the yeasty perfume of rising dough. You hear the rhythmic thud of hands against the wooden table, the sigh of flour as it drifts like soft snow across the boards, the low murmur of fire coaxing the heavy oven to life. The baker's hands move with quiet certainty. He shapes each loaf patiently, tucking and folding, pressing and smoothing. Each movement is an old ritual, a kind of silent prayer. He wears a simple tunic, dusted all over with flour, and his sleeves are rolled high above strong, scarred forearms nearby. An apprentice stirs a vat of bubbling porridge for the morning workers. She watches the baker with wide eyes, memorizing each small gesture, the precise twist at the end of the loaf, the way he checks the dough's elasticity by gently pressing his thumb into its surface. The apprentice dreams of one day shaping loaves on her own, feeling the living warmth of the dough beneath her palms. But beyond craft and warmth, there is something else at play here, the law. In this medieval village, bread is not merely food. It is order itself, the foundation of daily life and survival. Each loaf is regulated by strict rules. Its weight, its price, its shape, all controlled to protect villagers from deceit and hunger. At the heart of these rules stands a curious figure, the bread inspector. Before dawn is fully broken, the inspector arrives quietly at the bakehouse door. He wears a simple cloak, its edges frayed from many early morning rounds. In one hand, he carries a small set of scales. In the other, a slender wooden rod used to measure the loaves. The baker greets him with a respectful nod, neither warm nor cold. The inspector steps inside and begins his silent assessment. Each loaf is lifted, weighed, tapped gently along its crust. A too light loaf might mean punishment, a fine, a loss of reputation, or worse. You watch as the inspector breaks a loaf apart, steam curling up like a small spirit into the chilly morning air. He examines the crumb, the firmness, the hollow sound of the crust when tapped. His face remains unreadable, and yet you sense in his quiet frown or faint nod the power he holds over this humble art. Outside, the village is beginning to wake. A milkmaid hurries past with pails that swing and chime. A carpenter loads a cart with tools, pausing to sniff the warm bread scent that drifts into the dawn. At the bakehouse door, an old woman stands waiting, her basket lined with faded linen. She nods politely to the inspector as he emerges, cradling her thin purse in weathered hands. In this moment, bread is more than sustenance. It is the village's quiet promise that today there will be something warm to hold, something solid to trust, a crust to break with neighbors in the evening glow, as the first loaves are handed out and coins clink softly into the baker's pot. You sense the deep heartbeat beneath it all, the unspoken agreement that law and bread must rise together, that each crumb must carry fairness as much as flavor. And in that warm, fragrant hush of the early morning bakehouse, you begin to see the quiet dignity in every loaf, every careful knead, every cautious measure of weight and crust. Asterisk inside. The oven crackles like a hidden hearth spirit, its bricks glowing softly from within. You watch the baker lift a paddle, the wide wooden blade sliding beneath each loaf with practiced grace. He leans forward, eyes squinting against the radiant heat, placing the loaves, one by one, into the oven's welcoming belly. The apprentice stands nearby, arms crossed in quiet awe. Every movement seems sacred, the paddle sliding in and out, the steady shuffling of ash, the flick of a cloth to wipe stray flour from the edge of the table. As the loaves begin to bake, the air thickens. With a comforting perfume, the scent of yeast, honeyed crust, and slow patience. Each breath feels like an invitation to pause, to remember the warmth of shared meals, to imagine the small hands tearing off a piece for a child, the old man dipping his crust into broth as he hums a half-forgotten tune. Outside the bakehouse, the line grows. A young widow stands with her 2 daughters, each girl carrying a small linen pouch of coins. They whisper to each other, pressing their cold hands together for comfort. Their eyes dart now and then to the door, drawn by the glow and the drifting scent. Behind them, a shepherd waits, his cloak heavy with morning dew. His left boot is patched at the heel. He rocks back and forth, humming softly to the flock waiting beyond the village wall. He counts his coins again and again, his lips moving in silent prayer that today's loaves will be fairly measured. Nearby, an old soldier leans on a carved cane. He wears a small wooden token around his neck, a sign of mercy granted long ago by a local lord. The bread inspectors know him well. They nod as he passes, understanding that he has little left to spend. Yet he waits faithfully, knowing that even a single loaf can carry him through another day of slow, careful steps. Back inside, the inspector finishes weighing the last of today's batch. He makes a mark on a thin parchment sheet, a long list of columns and lines that track each baker's consistency, each village's supply. To outsiders, these lists might seem dull, yet to the village, they are as vital as any holy text. A too light loaf can spark suspicion, arguments, even violence. A loaf too heavy can bankrupt a baker trying to keep up with strict price limits. As the inspector nods his final approval, a slow breath of relief fills the room. The baker wipes his forehead with a flowery sleeve. The apprentice lets her shoulders drop, and even the oven seems to sigh softly in agreement. The door swings open, and the first customers step into the warmth. Coins clink, baskets are lifted, soft thank yous drift like petals. A mother leaves holding 2 loaves pressed close to her chest, as though they are newborn lambs. A young boy receives a crusty end piece from the apprentice, a small kindness, a secret gift of warmth on his way to morning chores. By midday, the hearth has cooled, and the last crumbs have been brushed from the wooden table. The apprentice scrubs the boards carefully, humming a tune she learned from her grandmother, a melody about fields of wheat swaying under moonlight, of harvest feasts and slow dances beneath star-strewn skies. The baker stands at the doorway, leaning his strong arms on the frame, gazing out into the lane. His mind drifts to tomorrow's dough, to the weight of each measure, to the quiet balance he must maintain between survival and honesty, And as the sun climbs higher, warming the earth and lighting the tips of the nearby forest, the village rests. In the knowledge that bread, so simple, so ordinary, remains a shared promise of fairness, of care, of life, carried forward one small crumb at a time. The weighing of souls, trust, justice, and the hearth as the village settles into its daily rhythm. The scent of bread lingers in the air, wrapping around doorways and drifting down winding lanes like an invisible thread tying everyone together. You wander slowly behind the baker as he steps out for a midday errand, his hands still dusted with flour, his eyes carrying the tired softness of someone who has watched the fire since before dawn. The village inspector's parchment rustles under his cloak as he crosses the square. His face remains calm and unreadable, but beneath that stoic surface lies a quiet burden. The knowledge that every loaf he weighs is not merely a question of dough, but a question of trust. Trust was the foundation of medieval bread laws. For many villagers, bread was the only constant in an uncertain world. Harvests failed, lords changed, wars rumbled beyond distant hills, but the morning loaf remained. And if that loaf were found wanting, if its weight did not match the law, the delicate bond of faith that knit the community together began to fray. In the far corner of the village, you see a young woman kneeling beside a small stone oven built into the side of her family's home. She bakes small flatbreads, too humble for official inspection, but still vital to her family's survival. She measures each handful of grain carefully, whispering a soft prayer as she sprinkles the coarse flour onto her board. Nearby, her elderly father sits beneath a fig tree, carving small wooden spoons. Each spoon bears a tiny groove down its handle, a private family mark, a symbol of gratitude for the bread that sustains them each season. Across the main square, the bread inspector pauses at a stall selling salt fish and onions. He exchanges quiet words with the fishmonger, nodding toward a sack of flour that seems lighter than it should be. In this small conversation, you feel the inspector's quiet tension, the responsibility of safeguarding not only the law, but also the fragile harmony of the village. Further along, a tanner steps from his workshop to examine a fresh loaf delivered to his door. He knocks lightly on its crust, tilts it in his hands, and listens for the hollow echo that signals an honest bake. Only then does he slice it open, revealing the pale, airy crumb inside. A satisfied smile flickers across his face before he offers the first piece to his young daughter, who receives it as though it were a treasure. These small rituals unfold every day, weaving unseen threads between homes, hands, and hearts. Bread becomes more than food. It transforms into a measure of soul, a test of fairness, a quiet ceremony of belonging. In one home, a grandmother slices her loaf with careful precision. She sets aside a small heel for the old widow next door, who often cannot afford her own. The slice is wrapped in a scrap of linen and left on the neighbor's doorstep before dawn. A silent offering no one discusses openly. Down another lane, a small group of children gather after morning chores to share their crusts beneath an ancient oak. They play a game in which they guess the weight of each piece before they bite, laughing and comparing who guessed closest. Their giggles float up into the branches, blending with birdsong and the hush of leaves, as afternoon shadows stretch and the heat of the ovens cools. The baker returns to his workshop. He wipes his brow and sits on a low stool, staring at the faint outlines left by loaves on his wooden boards, ghostly imprints of another morning's labor. The apprentice joins him, her fingers brushing against stray crumbs. Together, they review the list of pre-orders for the next day. a large round for the miller's family, a half loaf for the shepherd, a sweet bun for the priest's supper. Each request carries a story, a need, a hope. While they work, they speak softly of the inspector's rounds. The apprentice asks if he is fair, if he can be trusted to balance the weight of law with the weight of kindness. The baker pauses, turning his gaze to the window where sunlight drips slowly across the dusty floor. He carries the village in his scales. The baker finally replies, not just flour and water, but each heart, each empty stomach, each promise made at dawn. The apprentice nods, her young eyes thoughtful, as she turns to wash a clay bowl. Her movements are slow and precise, each swirl of water echoing the careful swirl of dough she dreams of shaping one day. Outside, a small procession winds through. The village, a wedding party making its way to the church. The bride carries a round loaf wrapped in white cloth, a sign of fertility and shared abundance. She cradles it like a newborn, her fingers trembling with joy and solemn duty. Children skip beside her, tossing flower petals into the dusty path, their small shoes thudding softly against the earth. In the hush between these scenes, you can almost hear the pulse of the village, a slow, steady heartbeat fed by ovens and dough, by scales and honest eyes, by small hands sharing crusts beneath trees, and as evening begins to stretch its indigo shawl across the sky, lanterns flicker one by one. Inside each home, bread rests on tables like a quiet promise, a circle of trust renewed with each sunrise, each cautious measure, each careful slice. Crumbs for tomorrow, legacy, memory, and the shape of trust. Good evening. Again, dear friend, as you stretch beneath your blanket, your breath becoming long and steady, we drift together into the softest corners of this story, beyond the crackling hearth, beyond the dusted flower boards, into the quiet legacy that lingers in each crumb. Imagine the village now under the hush of starlight. The ovens are cold, the work tables wiped clean. A single candle glows in the baker's window, its flame swaying like a small watchful spirit. The baker sits alone, holding a piece of crust between his fingers. He breaks it slowly, watching the tiny flakes fall onto the worn table. In this small gesture, there is an entire lifetime, mornings of kneading before dawn, days of waiting for the inspector's nod, evenings of counting coins and quiet prayers for the next sack of flour. Across the village, other families share their final crumbs of the day. A grandmother dips a crust into thin broth, telling a tale of when she was a girl and the bread inspector saved her father from ruin by forgiving a single light loaf. She smiles at the memory, her eyes closing as the warmth of soup and story blend into one. A young shepherd leans against the stable door, chewing thoughtfully on a piece of leftover bread. In his pocket, a tiny carved bead, a keepsake from his mother, rests against his thumb. He thinks of how each small crust can mean the difference between strength and weakness on the long pasture days, between hunger and health for his flock. In the church, a priest prays quietly, a small round loaf placed beside the altar as an offering. The crust bears the imprint of the baker's careful hands, the same hands that guided the dough through its transformation, that guarded the shape and weight, that carried the village's trust without boasting. Far beyond this village, in other towns and distant cities, bread inspectors walk the same pre-dawn paths, carrying scales and parchment, stepping softly from door to door. In each settlement, the same delicate balance unfolds. Law and mercy, weight and warmth, crust and crumb. Though centuries pass, the echo of this quiet guardianship ripples forward. In a modern bakery, a young baker feels a sudden need to double the weight of her loaves. She cannot say why, only that it feels like an ancient responsibility whispered through floury fingers and warm ovens. In some places, old measuring rods used by inspectors long ago still hang on walls like relics. Visitors pass by, glancing at these strange sticks with little thought. But if you lean in closely, you might sense the hush of old mornings, the flicker of candles, the quiet tremor in a baker's chest as he waited for the final nod of approval. At a village festival centuries later, children play a game where they guess the weight of different loaves by feel alone. Their laughter floats through the air like drifting petals, echoing the old joy beneath the oak tree where children once shared crusts and secrets. In the hush of your own room now, you might hear the faintest echo of those distant mornings, the thump of dough against the board, the puff of flour rising like a sleepy cloud, the soft, decisive snap of a crust being judged fair. You might feel the warmth of a shared loaf, the invisible thread tying hands and hearts across time, and perhaps you, too, have carried a small act of trust in your own life, a promise kept without witness, a kindness extended when no one was, watching a daily ritual that holds more weight than words. In the medieval village, the final loaf is set aside for those who may wander in hungry at twilight. This loaf waits by the hearth, its crust shining faintly in the candle glow. It is not weighed or measured. It belongs to no law, no parchment. It is simply given, a soft, quiet gesture that outlives decrees and fines. As you breathe in the stillness, the warmth of bread, the comfort of trust, you might carry with you the gentle thought that even the smallest crumbs hold stories of hope, of justice, of silent faith carried on flour-dusted hands. And so, as we close this story, we leave the baker resting by his cooling oven, the apprentice dreaming of her own dough to shape, the inspector wrapping his scales in linen, all drifting into their own soft, starlit slumber. In each crumb left on the table, in each loaf shared at dawn, there is an unspoken lullaby to the human spirit, patient, steady, and endlessly warm.